And we're back with another episode of the RookieVille podcast presented by Ballsville, where we combine fantasy football and poker, which creates big payouts with great odds. We got a great show for you today and an even better guest. You guys know him from the Mainville pod, the main host, Scott Fitzgerald. Scott, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Big fan of the pod. You guys are doing a tremendous job with the RookieVille. It's really helped me out with my dynasty builds. So keep it up, guys. Big fan, and it's nice to be on the other side and not be the host this time. I can just answer questions.
Got you, man. You got a lot of fantasy knowledge in that head of yours, man. We want to learn and pull from you as well. And like I've already said, you that bald head of yours, man. Scott Van Pelt's got nothing on you, buddy. One of the best in the sports game. We also my co-host here, Cbomb Connor, the 2024 Player of the Year. How are you doing today, bud?
Doing great. Yeah, I'm ready to talk a little bit about all the players that we all own, the rookies and stuff like that. You know, we've been hitting on all these players we talked about. I mean, from Ashton Genty to Kyle Williams to Jack Besh. So, yeah, I'm ready to just talk about it a little bit more.
Absolutely. And actually, before we get right into it, I'm really going to be intrigued because we're going to kick off with you when it comes to these exposures. Is really, since you are the reigning Player of the Year, I really want to know how much of maybe like how you diversified from last year, how much of those principles and kind of like your thought process applied to this year in 2025, or maybe you change the game. But if you want to dive into that before you bring up the graphics here, or go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So last year I was always hitting on the zero build, zero RB build teams. I paid attention a little bit last year, and actually some of those teams, did great. Obviously, I won, I think I won the most best ball leagues out of anybody. I won the main mid-states league pot there, and that obviously carried me to like you said, the Player of the Year. But there were some, hero RB builds that I really focused in on that really, hit some late round RBs. Bucky Irving was huge for my mid-states league victory there. So I think I've actually diversified just a little bit from zero RB all the way through to hero RB, where you take obviously one in the first 1 to 3 rounds or so, and then you pay attention to the later rounds, try to hit there. So I built a lot of my best balls like that. Actually, obviously I'm a best ball guy, so I diversify a ton. I have all crazy builds, 5 QBs to start or whatever. I'm not quite Jimbo where I take 12 QBs right away, but yeah. And then also another thing is I was really kind of, shying away, especially from rookies last year, because they're not that, guaranteed to hit right away. But a lot of those guys did. Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Bucky Irving, another name. All those guys hit. So I kind of shied away from that last year, but I've actually taken quite a bit of rookies in best ball this year. Not making them my main focus, but just diversifying a little bit, taking a little bit more than I would have last year.
Yeah. So with that said, let's just we're going to pull right up, and then we're going to discuss the exposures, and see exactly kind of where you're kind of heading right now, especially right now in June. We're kind of in the thick, or maybe in the thick. We're just the beginning stages. I'm sorry. Of OTAs, right? So this is just like a little precursor. There's like still plenty more best balls to draft through. These also have, for your guys' knowledge, this also has, I'm sorry, let me move down here, has best dynasty baked into it. Sorry. So without further ado, Scott, do you have anything that jumps out to you right away with Connor's exposures here with the rookie class specifically?
I'm in step with him with Arroyo. I really like that tight end in Seattle. I think Sam Darnold will definitely be able to lean on him a little bit. I've heard that they're moving him around the offense. He's more of a move tight end. He's not in line. So I really like that exposure right there. And Connor, are you getting him like in the 4th round or like late 3rd?
Yeah, so actually a lot of these Arroyos are either 4th round rookie picks or best ball where I'm getting them really, really late as like my 4th tight end or so that, might hit. I think he's going sometimes he's going undrafted in some of these best balls, which I can see because obviously you never know with these rookie tight ends. But I would say a majority of these are my my dynasty teams that I'm getting in the fourth round or even picking up waiver wire occasionally.
Got you. And I got one more too that kind of sticks out, and I don't see a ton of people. I don't see a lot of people talking about him. I didn't really get any on him, but considering the situation that he's going to an elite offense, I'm seeing Jalen Royals sitting right there, going to the Chiefs. Pretty, Rasheed Rice is going to be back. You got Worthy there. You still got Kelsey. So I mean, is he pretty much a future play? You're not, or are you looking for points this year?
So this actually, majority of my Jalen Royals exposure came in the mini leagues. So before the NFL draft actually happened, I was a big truther on Jalen Royals. I was taking him a ton. He wasn't going very early either, but I was expecting him to be a second round, even possibly a first round NFL draft pick. He didn't end up going to a great team, like you said, so he could be a good play. But most of my exposure, I would say 5 or 6 of the 10 are pre-draft NFL, couple dynasty takes, and then obviously I've taken him late in some of these big games as well.
Now, would you increase your exposure now that he's with the Chiefs, or diminishing it?
Depends on where he goes. So I was taking him earlier than he's going now in the mini leagues because, like I said, I was high on him. And my exposure is kind of high. I'm not a huge fan of the 20% range. Depends on how many leagues you're in, obviously, but especially with dynasty baked in. Jojo, could you go to just best ball and see what my exposure is to him, and then you can type his name in as well. But I think, like I said, so it's about 27% right there. Like I said, most of them are going to be majority mini leagues. I haven't taken it as much because I know how much I took him in the mini leagues. Even though he's in a great offense, like you said, I try to shy away from him just a little bit because I'm not expecting him to break out like I was pre-NFL draft.
Gotcha.
Yep. And I'm going to actually hit on a couple names here too. Trey Harris is one, and that's the reason why is because some of the news that just came out recently in OTAs where I want to say it was Greg Roman at the podium, and he kind of softly endorsed QJ as the starting receiver. What say you about not just your exposure in general, but just Trey Harris and I guess the outlook? If let's say he is the one that starts on the outside, and Ladd McConkey's already going to eat up targets. What say you about Trey Harris and his outlook in year one, and then obviously your remainder of the his dynasty value, I guess?
Yeah, I'm never really afraid of coach talk, especially this early in the offseason. I've taken Trey Harris because I think, again, a lot of him was pre-draft many leagues that I took a lot of Trey Harris in because he actually shot up boards after that because of where he went to the Chargers. I haven't taken him much in the big game, but I still believe he's going to be their wide receiver 2 this year. I think he's much more talented than QJ. Obviously, QJ really has had struggled his first 2 years there in Los Angeles. So.
Yeah, and I also think that, and this is since this was we just tabbed over to best ball mainly. Yeah. We also got to think about the rookies towards the end of the year when it comes to playoff time, or quote unquote fantasy playoff time, if you will. Which these are when Ballsville, which we're known for, is where you double down on your money. And those player takes, if you will, and your stances where you can get even bigger odds or bigger payouts, I should say. And those kind of situations do play out. Obviously, you saw Jalen McMillan, last year's rookie, who won several people leagues in various formats. So maybe he can be that Jalen McMillan. Or let me just throw it to you before we move on to another exposure list here. Is there a certain guy that you're kind of banking on with your best ball exposure that kind of can have that late run to kind of position you in those kind of situations?
I mean, not really that I'm banking on. Obviously, you're hitting most of these guys going to be later. I will say one guy that I think me and you are both big on that I think we're expecting hopefully to be a year one out, burst is Jack Besh. I only have 4 of them in the best ball outlook, but I think year one he has one of the best outlooks for a later round wide receiver that you can still get. And I think he's going to produce. So he's one of those guys I think, especially as he gets in tune with that offense, he gets in tune with Geno, that he could end up being their number one go-to, depending on what Myers does. So
I think you did that for a reason too, man, because I think we're about to segue into some crazy town over here. Scott, before we had any other final thoughts on Connor and his exposures here, or anything that you want to just touch on, Scott?
No, not really. I mean, I want to say I am a big Jack Besh fan. I mean, I love his story. I also love that he blocks, he catches everything. There's besides Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers, he's going to be in that offense, getting targets. So I mean, call me crazy, but he kind of reminds me. He doesn't have blazing speed. I'm thinking ceiling wise, could you imagine if this guy turned into like a Jordy Nelson down the road? I mean, he's got the body type. He's a pretty big dude. Catches everything. So I don't know. I like him a lot, and I'm seeing him go a little bit earlier in rookie drafts. He's not going in the the early thirds anymore. He's creeping into the mid to second.
Oh, he definitely went up to mid to early second, even like that, between that 3 or 4 picks of the second round now. Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
Yeah, and just to talk a little bit more about Jack Besh, I also own him quite a bit in Dynasty. He's one of my favorite players to take there because, like Scott said, he was actually going in the third early in the offseason. So you could get him late. I think the latest, I got him at like the 304, 305 in one of my leagues early on the offseason. And then obviously he's crept up all the way to like maybe the 202. I think I've seen him go, maybe the 203, which I think Joe Joe is probably taking him there. But
oh yeah, you can see that here, guys. Which is obviously I'm way too high and overexposed on about 3 or 4 players here. I don't want to be much above 30% on pretty much anyone, to be honest with you. But I got Jack Besh at round 20 or later in the mini games, which was, again, pre-draft. And I just kept eating him up because I'm just like, this guy's flying up boards, and I don't think anyone's really paying attention. So a lot of that exposure, I'm sorry, I'm on even the wrong guy. Jack Besh was pre-draft. I have since pulled back. I think Connor, I think it was on episode 5 or 6. We just pulled this up because we were teasing about doing this. And I only had 22, and I've done about 8 more drafts there. So about 25%. I've been pulling back on it because he's now in the 14, 15 round range now. So I pulled back on my exposure. I got enough of them. I think I gave a lot of ROI, if you will, or plus EV on that kind of return there based on him going in day 2. Terrence Ferguson just keeps going around 22, 23, 24 later right now. So I just keep gobbling him up. I've been big on him. I'm only going to touch on these ones that are really overexposed. Travis Hunter was another one. Again, there was that. I played into that, the uncertainty, I guess, of is he a DB? Is he a receiver? And you kept going past in double digit. If you go in double digits or later, and I'm like, this guy's going to be a top 2 pick or top 3 pick. I'm going to take him. And sure enough, now he's in round 8, round 7, round 6. So I pulled back on him too. I haven't taken much of him from a best ball perspective. I'll tab over to Dynasty just in a bit, but I want to give you guys, I guess, aside from those overexposures, anything else that you guys want to touch on here?
Yeah, I'll hit on just one name. So your exposure to Woody Marks is pretty high. With the recent signing of Chubb there, what's your feeling on that?
I'm pretty much out. I have enough exposure now, so I'm probably going to just let those ones ride. I think with the Chubb exposure, I think it's just going to be like too many cooks in the kitchen. I mean, granted, I think he's going to have a role, but I think I have enough where I'm fine with it because I kept getting him in 25, 26 in that range too. So it was just one of those last running backs to add to your roster, and I just kept clicking the name. And if he doesn't hit, again, if these are round 20 or later and they don't hit, it should not really affect my entire roster in any of these. So I'm not too concerned about that.
Yeah, and then one other name that I personally haven't taken, I don't think almost any of in any league format that you have quite a bit of just on this list here is Devin Neal, running back for New Orleans, I believe, right?
Yes.
So he's going to be behind Kamara this year. I haven't really taken him. I think he's still going to be behind Miller. I have kind of high hopes for Miller this year to maybe get a little bit more workload. So you want to just expand on why you took so much of them and what your hopes are for this year and moving forward Dynasty. I don't know what the breakdown is there between what's
Devin Neal was one of my favorite running backs pre-draft too. So I want to say at least 40% of this was pre-draft. So I had 10, so about 6 of the, a lot of best balls that I'm in right now. is coming from actually post draft, and I think it was around 18, 19 or later. So again, these are mostly late round picks that I'm just looking at value here, and that one's going to be a camp battle, I think, for the slot behind Kamara. I also think overall, when it comes to some of those ambiguous backfields, I like leaning on who the new regime took as opposed to who was left from the previous regime. So Kendra Miller was a previous regime guy. Maybe they're going to run him, maybe get him some tape, and maybe try to flip him somehow, some way. But I'm kind of just banking on him being their guy and maybe having a role at some point during the season, not necessarily early on. Now I'm going to go tab over Dynasty, and then I'll probably
we'll let Scott hit
Scott take a look at. Yeah, I'll tab over real quick. There you go. Changes up the list a little bit here when it comes to exposures, and those were all rookie pickups post draft, by the way, at the top. But keep going. Go ahead, Scott. Anything that jumps out to you?
Actually, not on this list, but I wanted to go the other list that you were talking about. A guy that I've moved up. It's my RB.
I can search him. Just give me the name.
Travion Henderson.
Trey. Now I only have him in only one league. It's because of in Dynasty, because I was just not at the pick in the Dynasty leagues that I'm in. I'll go back to best ball so you can see that exposure. But go ahead. What's the take?
No, I moved Travion Henderson up to my number 2 running back behind Genty over Marion Hampton. I think this guy's in the perfect position. Ramondre Henderson, or Stevenson, I'm sorry, he's not the back there. Henderson's a great blocker, catches the ball, raving reviews out of camp. I really like this situation, and I think behind Genty, Travion Henderson's going to definitely produce some really good numbers in that offense. You got a young quarterback. You got some decent receivers there. New coaching regime. They drafted this guy. It wouldn't shock me by, I'd say, halfway through the year that he takes the number 1 role and just runs with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking me every time you bring up an Ohio State guy and you're actually backing him, Scott, since you are a Michigan man. But I appreciate the love nonetheless for the Scarlet and Gray. Obviously, I like the kid from being one of the college teams that I support. That being said, there is some pause with his landing spot, with his role, only because in the years where Josh McDaniels was the OC for New England, and obviously with Tom Brady those years, running back backfields under McDaniels on that squad, the backfields overall finished 22 or later overall. So that gives me a little pause of what can be really done. Now, again, Brady's retired. He's no longer there. But McDaniels, from what he's done in the past, I'm a little worried about the backfield overall. That being said, we do play at a full PPR format. And if he can lock down that pass catching role, I still think Ramondre would be the lead guy to take the early down role or the short yardage. So maybe the touchdown upside and touchdown equity might not be in his favor. But again, we're just trying to accumulate points in any which way. And I think we all vibe with the pass catching backs that can provide some fantasy production.
Got you. Yeah.
All right. Anything else before we move on? Let's go right to
one more quick thing.
Go ahead.
I want to run through. So every time there's a draft class, I know it's probably kind of galaxy braining it, but I always look for one player that could potentially be a gold jacket guy, and I'm always looking at every draft. I'm like, okay, I mean, I know it's far fetched, but there's always a guy you're like, wow, this guy could, really, really be good. And in every class there could be one, there could not be, but I look at a guy like Travis Hunter and I love this kid. I mean, if he could eventually, once it comes time to signing a big contract and wants the big money, I'm thinking he's going to have to probably play one side of the ball if he wants the big money. And if he can lock down a wide receiver in that offense, he kind of reminds me a lot of like an Antonio Brown. So I really like that comp, Antonio Brown. And if he turns out to be anywhere close to him, I mean, that's you're looking at somebody that could be a gold jacket player. So I'm trying to get as much exposure to Travis Hunter as I can. I know in Dynasty, you got to obviously have the first couple picks in the draft to even land them. But in best ball or anything like that, I'm trying to grab them as much as I can. And the price now is getting worse to where I can't even get them now.
100%. And I do agree with that. He was going to have to eventually focus on one side of the ball. But that being said, I think the kid's so ultra talented that they're going to give him a long leash to try to figure this out and playing both sides of the ball. But I think you guys have heard Brian Thomas had a small injury recently. I mean, let me just ask Connor this too. Like, if let's say that injury actually occurred, or if something happened to Brian Thomas, do you think that might be the catalyst to get him to just play one side of the ball? What say you?
No, I don't think. I think at least for the first half of his career, he's gonna try his hardest to play both sides of the ball, no matter what. He did that through college. People were telling him that he couldn't play both sides in college. He obviously did that. Outstanding Heisman winner. One of the best CBs in the country, one of the best wide receivers in the country last year. So I still believe he's going to play both sides of the ball, basically no matter what they asked of him on offense. We'll see which side will actually, he'll get more snap percentages from. But I think he's going to play both sides of the ball for the first while he's young. Well, I'll say that.
Well, good take. Because I agree. I'm kind of with you on that as well. Without further ado, we're going to go right into Scott's exposure. A lot less leagues than Connor and I, but at the same time, I still think the percentages are very, very strong across the board. Not oversaturating your spots like I was at the top. Again, I kind of that 30% is kind of should be your threshold, guys. And in all seriousness, I think Connor would agree.
Yep.
If you're below that, and that's where you're kind of really honing in on a certain player takes and player stance. Obviously, I had like 4 at the top, well above that. But I'm going to try to bring that down as much as I can towards the end of the fantasy season before the season starts. But for Scott, I want to just talk about RJ Harvey because he's the man of the hour. I know we touched on a little bit in the main pod. But what's your now final take with J.K. Dobbins being such a great pass catcher? Third down specialist, I should say, pass blocker, I should say. Do you think that maybe that third down role that I was speaking of that I thought was going to be locked down prior to the signing, do you think that this kind of muddies the backfield too much to some degree? Are you about buying more of him now that if he drops? What say you?
Oh, if he drop, I think it's great news for if you're interested in RJ Harvey. He's going to drop now. Everyone, seeing J.K. Dobbins come there, and I like J.K. Dobbins. I think he's a really good back with just unfortunate injuries. But he's going to get some run there, but now the RJ Harvey shares you're going to be able to pick them up for a lot cheaper now. So I'm going to grab as many as I can. RJ Harvey and Dobbins, I could see a 60-40 split, maybe 70-30 Dobbins, at least to start off for the year. And then as the year goes on, and RJ Harvey gets his legs under him because he is a rookie, maybe that'll be closer to, 50-50. But, Sean Payton, and I don't go too much into coach speak, but he was raving about him. And so main point, RJ Harvey shares should be easy to attain now.
There are a lot more. I didn't have a lot, and obviously Connor and I were pretty low on him, so to speak. Relatively speaking, it was to price, right? So Connor, you can go in on that a little bit too as well, and just kind of see where your take is now with RJ Harvey.
Yeah, this was just bound to happen with Harvey. He was getting so overdrafted in rookie drafts, in my opinion. Going at the 106 in some leagues, which pre-draft nobody was really taking him anywhere close to that. Even after draft, I don't think we believed he should have been going that high. I think we had him early second round, late first, depending on your team needs. But I think this was just bound to happen because of the reason that so many people were taking him so high, because they had zero backfield competition. They were bound to sign somebody, and there was Nick Chubb out there. There's J.K. Dobbins, and there's a couple other names still out there that could be signed to some other teams to muddy up some backfields too. But his stock's going to take a hit a little bit, especially in Dynasty, because the reason was that he was going so high is because they had zero backfield competition. Now that they have a guy that's produced in the NFL for 2 or 3 years, besides injuries, you take away injuries, he's been one of the best backs consistently in the NFL in recent years. So I think he's going to drop. I like that he drops because I actually get to take him now some, but it kind of sucks that all our rookie drafts are over because now I have to, try to do a trade for him or whatever, or, I'm taking him in some best balls. But since his value dropped, but it's dropping to where it should be, obviously, because me and Joe Joe are both value guys. We're not going to overshoot a guy just because of their situation usually. So when they drop to where they should be, we're like, finally, thank you. Stuff like
Yes,
that.
sir.
So.
Yes, sir. I want to actually bring up a guy that Connor loves, which is Luther Burden here. I don't know what happened with the rest of the exposures here. I think you had a couple, one over 30 here, but I don't know where it went. However, I think it was Caleb Johnson, but it's weird. Luther Burden, he has a soft tissue injury right now. Soft tissue injuries are the ones that we fear the most, right, Scott? I know that you're a big proponent of, hey, if they're injured preseason, I really don't want to touch them. I'll let someone else deal with it. Where are you at with Luther Burden now? Or also, how has that changed maybe your view of Luther Burden pre-draft to now, dealing with a soft tissue injury that's lingering? Does this prompt up even Olamide Zaccheaus to take the 3 role if his injury lingers even more? Roma Dunze taking more run and get more targets? Go ahead.
I don't think it bothers the long-term value. I mean, I'm still drafting where he's at, but as far as like immediate production, it's definitely concerning when you have soft tissue injuries. Plus, with all the targets that are going to be going around, the worst thing you want to do as a rookie is not be there for rookie reps. I mean, the more reps you miss, it's the chemistry between the quarterback, learning new stuff in the playbook that they implement, the hot routes, all that stuff. It's so valuable for a rookie to be there instead of obviously a vet, can kind of hop right in. But for short term, I'm kind of putting pause on this now and best ball. But long term dynasty value, I still like Luther Burden for his future. Eventually when DJ Moore's gone.
Yeah, exactly. And Connor, a similar way though. I guess since you were so big on him, how do you kind of balance that? Because he obviously has explosiveness. He obviously has the dynamic ability to create big plays. So how do you, I guess, balance that now moving forward to finish out the best ball season, so to speak, and then as you enter redraft, obviously I think keeping an ear to the ground to news and obviously injury updates here. But how do you balance that out to knowing what he can be, especially even in year one? But go ahead.
Yeah, some of the comments the coach made scared me a little bit off of Burden. It wasn't that he was just out; it was like he was disappointed. I don't remember. I think it was Ben Johnson that said it. That he's missing out basically just being out there. Yeah, yep. Exactly. And it wasn't like just what he said; it was like how he said it. He seemed very disappointed that he wasn't out there, not just because he was injured, but because I think there was something else going on. I think we touched upon it early in the offseason that he didn't have the motor that we thought, that's one of the reasons he fell. And I just think that this is another thing about that. It's maybe, and I don't want to say that he's faking an injury or anything like that, but, it might not be as serious as what, he's, making it out to be. And that's one reason Ben Johnson said it like that. So it scares me a little bit, actually more so dynasty wise than it does anything, because will he ever, reach his potential that we thought he could be? If he's not out there year one. Not that year one's going to make or break anything fantasy wise, but it could in the coach's mind. He might just sail back and always be a Jalen Reeder or somebody like that, that just never reaches their potential.
100%. I mean, we're all on the same page here. It seems like we're all in lockstep. We have a little pause here on Luther Burden. We know that he can be great. Just hope that he gets on the field sooner rather than later to avoid falling too far behind on that depth chart and obviously meaningful reps. Next name, and probably the last name that I'll touch on here, unless Connor, I really want to touch on this one, but is there a name before? Because obviously I didn't even throw it to you on names here on Scott's list here.
Yeah, there's everybody we've really talked about on there. So I'll just throw it to you, let you hit on the name you want to.
Yeah, the main one I want to touch on is Caleb Johnson because of the Aaron Rodgers signing, right? Because that was one that obviously a lot of people know about right now. And how obviously we went through it on, I think the crew actually went through it on the main pod recently, but how does it really affect even the running game and the backfield? And how I look at this is Aaron Rodgers is 41 years old? Is he 42 yet? Somewhere up there. He's a 40-year-old man. He doesn't want to get hit that hard. So do you think that he would rather have Jalen Warren protecting him as far as a pass blocking perspective, which means getting on the field more, limiting Caleb Johnson's even opportunity? Or does he? I think one time he misses a blitz pickup and he gets hit in the ribs. He's like, get him out of there. I want Jalen Warren on there. So I want to kind of hear from you guys based on kind of that narrative and that outlook, how that affects Caleb Johnson production here.
I'll talk about it just a little bit on his situation last year because of the Jets. If you watched early in the year, they played a ton more of Braylon Allen than anybody thought. And I think one reason why is because he's just such a big guy that, like what you said, he wanted that protection. But obviously they needed to get the more talented player, Breece Hall, in there, and that's what happened throughout the year, especially when they started losing games. So they did that. But I think you're hitting on something that, they'll probably lean on Jaylen Warren just a little bit more. I think he's also probably the better pass catching back as well. So dump offs and stuff like that. I don't think this really does anything to Caleb Johnson's actual stock and anything. I think this is still what I thought, it would be going forward for this year anyway. But I think it actually opens up the run game just a little bit more. So maybe it actually helps Jaylen Warren and helps Johnson, but just not Johnson as much.
Gotcha. And then Scott, same outlook to you. Also knowing that since Aaron Rodgers was playing in more pass happy offenses, we're in with Artie Smith here. I think you and I agree on Artie Smith and being kind of almost fantasy kryptonite in that sense. So do you think this even gels, the Aaron Rodgers going to Pittsburgh, and then obviously still kind of parlay that and how that affects the run game, specifically Kevin Johnson?
Well, if the Steelers want to continue to win football games, they're going to have to go back to Steeler football. That's playing good defense and running the football. And I think the Aaron Rodgers signing is actually good for that backfield because now we have somebody in there who, even though he's past his prime, he keeps defenses honest. And Caleb Johnson's going to be a volume back, so he's going to get a lot of touches. Now, yes, Jaylen Warren is definitely going to be involved because of the passing game, being on crucial hurry-up situations. But I've invested a lot in Caleb Johnson because I think it's a volume situation. Sorry, guys. I think it was a volume situation.
Your dog feels the same, man.
Yeah, my wife, every time my wife walks up the door, she thinks he's going for a walk. So he thinks he goes
all
off.
Good.
But anyways, so I actually like the situation. I actually feel a little bit better now that Aaron Rodgers is there because if not, I mean, who are they really going in at quarterback? And
it was dust. It was just dust. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it now you're talking about stacking the box, and I think it'd be harder for the running game.
Gotcha. All right, guys. That should do it for this round and this wrap of sleeper exposure. I think some key points just to consider about and take away from this is trying to over diversify like I was at the top. I'm going to probably bring that down, bring around that 30% and lower, but still have your strong player takes. Connor, anything else to wrap up here?
No, yeah, definitely diversify. You don't ever want to have too many of one player. You don't want 79% of Jack Bech.
69. It's actually 65. But
diversify is a major part of fantasy football, especially best ball. I think diversification is just a major key. Dynasty, you really don't have to be diversified as much. Redraft, definitely. I wouldn't redraft if we were looking at just redraft. I'm not a big diversifier in just redraft. You have to play like you know what you're doing. So be really high on your players and take them. Don't diversify in redraft. Diversify a lot in best ball, and then diversify some in dynasty.
Good takes. Scott, any last words on that?
If we're talking best ball, definitely invest in offenses, stack them. That's how you win in best ball. High-powered offenses and stack those players.
Well, you know what? Yeah, that is actually part of the reason why I have so much of those other players too. I play a lot for, and this is something else to take away for best ball specifically, is that I know that if I end up winning my pod, so to speak, and we're in those later stages, I'm leaning on those game stacks that I've been building. I've been paying attention to weeks 15, 16, and 17. If I make past week 14, I'm against other people that I have to beat. And if I have game stacks around those, I know that on the top of my head that LV plays Philly, they play Houston, and they play New York Giants in 15, 16, 17. So I have neighbors at the top. I may not have gotten Brock Bowers, but now I have a lot of Jack Bech to parlay with that towards the end of the season. So those are a lot of things that I think about towards the end, and why I have so much player stances. But consider that as you guys close out best ball season. And without further ado, that's a wrap.
That's a wrap.